the session.
Recording in progress.
Okay, let's get started then. My name is Therese Michelson, and I'm the Information Officer for the Peace River Regional District. Thank you for joining us here today for the joint media briefing. We have a number of different organizations represented, and the way we usually do this is we have each organization spokesperson provide the media with an update, and then they will put their name and their title in the chat so that you have the correct spelling as well of their names. So in a couple of minutes, I'm going to introduce everybody. Just a couple of reminders for everyone in the meeting is if you could please stay on mute until it's your time to talk, and that helps us getting, clear sound as much as we can. And then the other thing is for the questions, if you could try to focus your questions for the spokesperson who's provided the update, that would be very helpful as well. And if you can use the raise hand signal, that also helps. So that way the raise hand signal in Zoom, it just pumps you to the top of the screen, so it's easier for me to spot. But we often have troubles where the hands isn't working, so then you can always let me know in the chat. I will try to keep an eye on it, and I appreciate it when some people help flag it for me as well. So what I'd like to do is, I've just got a couple more people joining, so I'm sort of chatting a bit while they come in. And okay, I think we're good now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by introducing our spokespeople. What we're going to have today is we'll be having an update from the BC Wildfire Service for the Donnie Creek Wildfire Complex. We'll have an update from the South Peace Complex for BC Wildfire Service. And there'll be an update from Tumbler Ridge, as well as an update from Emergency Support Services. But we also have representatives from the Regional Wildfire Coordination Center here, who I'll introduce, and from Fort St. John Emergency Support Services, in case you have additional questions that they can answer. So if I could ask our various spokespeople just to flip their cameras on so that people can see who you are, I will do some introductions here. So we have Forrest Tower, who's here with the South Peace Wildfire Complex. I have Brian Zandberg with Donnie Creek. I have Sharon Nickel, who's here with the Regional Wildfire Coordination Center. I have Therese Finnegan with Tumbler Ridge. And I have Octavian Lakatusu with the Emergency Support Services. And then Ryan Harvey with Fort St. John, who's here to answer questions. So I'll get going right away then, so that we can keep things moving. And I'll ask if Forrest, if you wouldn't mind getting started with the first update on the wildfire in your area.
Sure, thanks. So I will give an update on both the West Cascatna River Wildfire and Peavine Creek Wildfire, which are the two wildfires under the South Peace Complex. So my name is Forrest Tower, Fire Information Officer with BC Wildfire Service, and my spelling is in the chat. So I'll start with the West Cascatna River Wildfire. We received around 15 mils scattered across both fires. The Cascatna River Wildfire received a little bit less than the Peavine Creek Wildfire, but enough precipitation that we've seen a diminished fire behavior across both fires. Our priority area remains on that west flank, working along the Bear Hole Lake Road south of Highway 52 and connecting down into the Cascatna Forest Service Road. So we are able to get machinery and ground crews right close to the fire's edge at this point with that diminished fire behavior. And so that's where we'll have continued work over the next several days, if not weeks, depending on what the future weather brings us in terms of any more precipitation or a drying trend. If we do see a drying trend, we're expecting about a 5-day period before we see an increase in potentially more significant fire behavior. However, that usually, in the past few days, we've seen that happening more on the east side of the fire. We haven't seen any significant fire behavior on the west flank for some time. On the east side of the West Cascatna River Wildfire, it is still burning in some pretty dense spruce stands. And so we also have no containment on that side, given the access issues and our priority focus on the west side. So we do have containment lines in terms of a plan and what we would like to do, but there is no established containment lines on that east side. What we are using right now is initial attack crews to work in and along the hotspots and areas of active fire on that eastern side. We will likely be able to put in a contingency machine guard, sort of bigger box around the east flank of the fire, but it's going to take some time, just given access and difficulty in the terrain. It's very wet ground on the eastern side, and so it's just very slow moving, getting heavy equipment there. And then their work is also slow, just given the ground saturation. So what we're doing going forward is using initial attack crews to find hot spots. We have drone scans starting on this fire. And so once we receive those results, we will be using that as we do once we are beginning the process of scanning fires to identify any areas of heat and getting our initial attack crews. They'll be supported by unit crews, and it will be more of a ground crew operation instead of heavy equipment operation. As long as we have favorable firefighting weather, that's going to be the tactic going forward. But like I mentioned, in about 5 days, if we do see a drying trend, we're likely to see some fire behavior in that area. And so we have kept the evacuation order in place in the One Island Lake area. There is no containment, as I mentioned, and so the risk is still there in terms of further spread in an east and northeast direction if we do receive any significant winds or a drying trend coupled with winds. So while we are in there increasing containment, that order will remain in place until we are confident that the risk for further spread is reduced enough. On the Peavine Creek wildfire, crews are still working on the north and south flank, primarily working off of established machine guard that pretty much runs the length of both flanks of the fire on that north and south side. It's more in a mop-up stage at this time. However, on both fires, we're already seeing an increase in activity, even as early as this morning, with some visible flame and some activity. So if we don't receive any precipitation in this weather system that is forecast to move into this area starting tomorrow, it's forecast for widespread showers, but we're not sure if we're going to locally get any over these fires. If we don't, we will probably see some smoke being produced from these fires. If we continue to see a return to above seasonal temperatures in the area in the next week and future weeks, likely will be highly visible smoke coming from both Kiskatna and Peavine potentially. So just wanting to, even though we do have enough confidence that the community of Tumbler Ridge is not at imminent threat to wildfire on that west flank, there will be a visible fire for several weeks if we do see a drying trend continue in that area. So certainly not enough rain to extinguish either of these fires. More so, it's given us a lot of time to get containment into place, and specifically on that western flank for West Kiskatna River wildfire, and on the southern flank for the Peavine Creek. Those were our two areas of high priority. So we'll still see a continued presence. There's over 100 wildland firefighters working on both of these fires, over 30 pieces of heavy equipment. We have 9 helicopters. Today, the widespread smoke from the Donnie Creek complex that's moving south limited our ability to fly at all today. So no helicopters were able to get out of their respective airports and staging areas in order to make it over to the fire. We're expecting improved visibility tomorrow, which will allow us to continue those aerial operations. So overall, we are confident on that western flank, given the work that has been able to be done by heavy equipment and ground crews that has reduced that threat, that imminent threat. And so that's why we've seen a reduction in the evacuation order area. An alert does remain in place. And I would again just stress that there is a highly active wildfire very close to the community. So while that imminent threat is gone, very important for people to be paying attention to those sources of information. So for wildfire information, that's us with the BC Wildfire Service, but also really important to pay attention to local authorities. So either Peace River Regional District or the District of Tumbler Ridge. Both of them have very important information as we do have alerts in this area still. And so just important to keep paying attention to those sources as sources of information as things may change. And the final thing I'll mention is there is still prohibitions, open burning, open fire prohibitions in the Prince George Fire Center. And so always a good idea to check with the BC Wildfire Service, either our website or the app, to just ensure that people are kept up to date with what the current open fire prohibitions in the area are. So I will leave it at that, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Forrest. Does anyone have any question for Forrest? Waiting a moment to check the chat as well. No, I think we're good, Forrest. Thank you so much for your update.
No problem. Thank you.
Great. Next, if I could ask Brian Zandberg, if you could provide an update, would be great for the Donnie Creek area.
Yeah, Therese, you bet. I just put my contact information in the chat as well. Donnie Creek Wildfire. So I will speak to the complex of wildfires here. So it's Donnie Creek, as well as the Kahlua Lakes wildfire and the Muskwa River wildfire as well. Maybe I'll start with Kahlua Lakes and Muskwa River. Those ones are monitor only response at this time. They're further to the north of the Donnie Creek wildfire. And I understand that we will have probably updated fire perimeter sizes for those probably by tomorrow, I'm assuming. But again, those are monitor only at this time. In terms of the Donnie Creek wildfire, continues to grow. We're seeing growth kind of in multiple directions of the fire driven by winds. I think probably the most significant thing to relay today would be some of the planned ignitions operations that we are looking at doing along the Alaska Highway.
I'm just sorry to interrupt you. I'm just seeing that for some of the people on the call, your audio is cutting in and out. And I'm wondering if it's the headset or your earbuds, perhaps.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that a bit better?
I think so. I'm looking at the chat to see if that's working better. I think it's working better for me.
That's good. Yeah, I'll keep forging ahead and watch the chat to see how we're doing. But yeah, I've taken my earbuds out. So yeah, maybe I'll just start off with for Donnie Creek wildfire, the most significant thing for today is for the public, I think, is the planned ignitions operations. We're looking at initiating later this afternoon, if still cutting in and out. Interesting.
It could just be because you're way up north and not a great connection area. So it would be great if you could continue your briefing. I can still hear you, even if it's not great sound. And then perhaps media can follow up with you if they need a specific clip from you afterward, if that's okay.
Yeah, that sounds good. Let's do that. I'll raise my voice like an elderly gentleman, and we'll see if that makes any difference. But yeah, and media, please do feel free to reach out. You've got my fire information officer contact information in the chat. So yeah, I think again for today, planned ignitions operations up near Trutch, mile 202 of the Alaska Highway. That is where the fire is closest. The fire perimeter is closest to the Alaska Highway, and where it could pose challenges for that highway corridor. So we do have burn plans in place. We are awaiting conditions later on this afternoon to support those operations. It would consist of aerial ignitions of about a 19-kilometer strip of forest fuels that run really close to the Alaska Highway there. This would be sort of a fire suppression tool that BC Wildfire Service often uses to bring the fire down to a containment line. And that containment line here would be the Bucking Horse River Road, which again is quite close to the Alaska Highway. We are hopeful that there will be no disruptions to the Alaska Highway. We are prioritizing planned ignitions in this area just to secure that highway corridor more. If we don't do anything, we do feel that winds will eventually drive the fire across the highway. So this is a method that we have to counteract that and to secure that area. So if people are passing through the area, it's best to watch Drive BC website for the latest conditions on the highway. We're working very closely with Modi and our other partners for security on the road. And yeah, similar to other parts of the Prince George Fire Center, we're still seeing that drying trend up here. We're not getting precipitation on the Donnie Creek wildfire the way other fires have had precipitation. So yeah, it just continues to dry, and there's just nothing on the rain gauges here. We are, given the weather conditions, we are expecting some potentially volatile fire behavior today and tomorrow as well. In certain types of fuels, we're up in black spruce country here, jack pine, which are lodgepole pine as well. And so when we have sort of the wrong winds, those fuels are ready to ignite. So in addition to that, that planned ignition up near Trutch, we do have a lot of structural protection specialists and personnel in various places on this fire. And this fire is now quite, well, it's a very significant fire in terms of BC's fire history. Our current size for the Donnie Creek wildfire is 506,692 hectares. If you take a measurement from east to west at the widest part of the fire, it's 136 kilometers across it at this point. So it's quite big. We do have a lot of wildfire personnel working the fire, about 147 firefighters today in various sectors of it. You know, I could summarize their activities as really working to get containment plans in places like very key places of the fire, and doing a lot of structural protection work on values that are sort of at various points of the Donnie Creek wildfire, which again just covers a huge landscape. So there are industry assets out there. There are values identified with our First Nations partners. There are recreation cabins out there as well. So just a lot of structural protection work going on. They're supported by about 40 pieces of heavy equipment and 11 helicopters at last count as well. Yes, what else would I say for this fire? Yeah, probably I would just maybe underscore we are expecting significant fire activity in the coming days. There is a chance that we might need to, just given the fire growth, that there is a potential that we will have to work with our local government partners to really reassess evacuation order areas. That's ongoing right now. So, but definitely want to, yeah, just put that out there and encourage people to, yes, really exercise caution and check drive BC before coming up through the area. It's still a very dynamic situation.
Thank you so much, Brian. Are there any questions for Brian related to the Donnie Creek complex that you'd like to ask on the call here? Okay, I'm not seeing any come up. You might get some follow-up though, just because the sound, I guess, for some was working okay for me, but I think for some it sounded like it was cutting out. Thank you for keeping going for the rest of us, though. Appreciate that, Brian.
Well,
okay, so next, if I could ask Therese Finnegan from Tumbler Ridge. Therese, if you could give an update.
Thank you, Teresa. Well, we have lots of very happy residents streaming into Tumbler Ridge. So the order was rescinded this morning at 10 o'clock, and we had activity, you know, people streaming into town probably about 11:30, which is depending on where they were coming from, Chetwynd, Dawson and Fort St. John. So residents will come home to a welcome home pamphlet on their door. And I think primarily what the first steps when you're returning home, we've got P&G in town for today and tomorrow, offering assistance to residents whose gas was turned off if anything needs to be relit, and obviously an emergency number there if there's any bigger issues than that. Our district staff have been working on to put on additional shifts at our transfer station. We missed a garbage collection this week, so I know that is it's going to be an issue for some people. I know my neighbor came out with some crazy stuff in his house, so definitely extra pickups Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Monday. So we'll hopefully get everybody cleaned up before next week's normal programming. We also have DPS in town for 2 days, offering services for any of the community. We've set them up in our community centre, and they're available to speak with any residents who want to decompress or talk about any of the issues that they're dealing with stress and trauma. Other than that, our air quality here is really good. We've got some blue skies. We're very mindful of the fact that we are under an alert, and our messaging will continue to be, be prepared, be aware, and we are literally not out of the woods yet. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Therese. Are there any questions for Therese and Tumbler Ridge? Okay, looking good. So my next briefing will be done regarding emergency support services from Octavian Lakatusu. Octavian, can you go ahead and give your update?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Therese, for putting this on. So kind of like a small but important update from our end here at ESS. So this has been posted on social media. It's been posted on all 3 locations regarding the evac order being rescinded. And just a reminder that if your property is no longer under the evac order, you may return home and no longer need to go back to an ESS reception center. However, we're still having staff here. So actually ours just ended at 2, but we are available again tomorrow here in Dawson Creek. And Fort St. John is 10 a.m. until 5:30, and in Chetwynd from 10:15 until 4. So if you need gas, they are still doing referrals, which is about $50 per household to make sure that people get home. There's also, we also wanted to kind of take a moment on behalf of all the ESS staff and volunteers to thank all the residents for their ongoing patience and understanding. We know that we're not 100% out of the weeds yet, but things are moving in the right direction. And of course, we wish them a safe voyage home. There's also quite a bit of information on the Tumbler Ridge, District of Tumbler Ridge Facebook page, which I highly encourage everyone to go to. It involves information regarding what residents can expect once they get back to their homes. And there's some very good instructions there from the city, from the district, as to what they can do to be safe and to kind of transition back into their home as smoothly as possible. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If anyone has any questions for me, you know where to reach me. Thanks.
Does anyone have any questions for Octavian related to the emergency support services that are in place? Not seeing any. Okay, great. I will actually get to an update then for you from the Peace River Regional District. So we were extremely pleased for our neighbors in Tumbler Ridge that their residents were able to return home. However, in the Peace River Regional District, we still have a number of areas under evacuation order. So a quick update on some address numbers for you here. For the West Cascatna River Fire Order number 4, there's about 58 addresses. For the Peavine Creek Alert, there are now 9 that were under order and are now under an evacuation alert. We have up in the Cascatna River Fire Alert area, we don't have any properties. It's primarily sparsely populated, so no civic addresses. For the Donnie Creek Fire, we still have 372 addresses that are under an evacuation alert, and we have about 14 properties that are under an evacuation order. So we still have a number of people who are gaining from the benefit of the emergency support services, and we just want to express our thanks to all the volunteers and staff who continue to help our residents, and of course to BC Wildfire and all of the responders on the ground who are working to contain the fires. But in general, that's our update on the current situation for evacuation orders and alerts for the Peace River Regional District. The only other thing I would like to do is I do want to introduce my colleague, Ted Townsend. He's going to be covering me for tomorrow so that I can have a day off. And so thank you, Ted. And I will put in the chat the contact information for the EOC Information Officer Desk. I think most of you have it because it goes out with all the media advisories, but I wanted to make sure that you guys were aware that it would be Ted Townsend taking any media calls tomorrow. So does anyone have any questions for me related to the Peace River Regional District evacuation orders and alerts? Okay, I am not seeing any. So I think that I'll just do one more check-in. Has anybody got a question for anybody else on the spokesperson organizations that are on the call today that we have not had a chance to answer yet before we wind up this media briefing? Not seeing any. Okay, that's a wrap then. Thank you everybody for taking the time today.